So I read a book in the last 3 months that was pretty good. I'm going to tell you why I liked it, what I learned from it, and I'm going to tell you all about it. This episode of Sweaty Startup is brought to you by Chicken Ribs. I have a friend from college who actually started this business. They sell frozen chicken thighs that taste like ribs. They're phenomenal. They sell them in a vacuum sealed box, free 2-day shipping anywhere in the country. You get 30 ribs for $75. And actually, if you usually about 3 of those make a meal, so you get 10 meals for $75. And as a promotion for this podcast, he's given us $10 off. So on chickenribs.com, enter the coupon code SWEATY and get $10 off. But these things are phenomenal. I throw them on the grill all the time. They come pre-cooked, but I throw them on the grill for a couple minutes on each side. Absolutely phenomenal. You can microwave them as well. Quick, easy, healthy, and I highly recommend checking them out. So let's talk about this book. It's called They Call Me Ted, and it is an autobiography by Ted Turner. If you don't know Ted Turner, he is a media mogul who when I was growing up, he owned the Atlanta Braves. He basically is a famous entrepreneur in cable TV. But this autobiography is absolutely phenomenal because it starts with his story that very few people know. He grew up in Macon, Georgia, a couple hours away from me here in Athens, Georgia. And his dad was in the billboard business. They call it outdoor advertising. And when Ted was growing up, he always worked for his dad's billboard company. He would do billboard sales. He would do billboard maintenance. He would do billboard install. He knew it pretty well. But then when he went off to college, he decided to come back to work for his dad's business. And at the age of 24 actually, his father, with this business that was valued at about $1 million back in the 60s, I think it was 63 or 64 when this happened, his father committed suicide. And the business was left to Ted at age 24. But the really interesting part about this is that his father had some mental issues and been severely depressed. And in his last few months of life had negotiated a deal to sell the media company to one of the competitors. And the price wasn't that fair. Ted didn't want to do the deal. And it was a huge problem for him because he was about to lose the business to a competitor for a way below market price. And it wasn't his decision. And his dad was in a crazy mental state when he negotiated that deal. So basically Ted fought, hired a bunch of attorneys, and actually kind of claimed that his father, wasn't of mental capacity, the right mental state to sell this company. He ended up having to buy out this competitor's deal contract, kind of take on a lot of leverage, take on a lot of risk to own the business, but he ended up wrestling it away from this competitor and owning it. And over the next 3 to 4 years, he absolutely exploded the growth of this business at 24 years old. He went from a small office in Macon to buying up competitors all over the Southeast, getting 4 or 5 billboard companies under management, absolutely exploding the growth. And then when he was, let me see, I got some notes here. So he then bought this failing radio station in Atlanta, and he sold the billboard company to buy a group of radio stations because he looked at billboard as kind of the past, and I'm going to buy this group of radio stations because that's one step closer to the consumer and the way everything is moving. He took on a ton of leverage to buy these group of radio stations, and then in 1969, at age 29 years old, when he was doing really well, he had a multi-million-dollar net worth already, making a ton of money. He sold all of his assets to buy a struggling TV station in downtown Atlanta, Channel 17 in Atlanta. And he took that on as his next project with tons of leverage to build and grow a TV station. He then slowly trudged along. And when I say slowly, over the course of about 5 years, he got it extremely profitable, worth a lot of money. He convinced Satellite, he kind of convinced the, I forget the name of the overarching governing body of radio and TV, but he convinced them to let him distribute his channel by satellite and basically compete with ABC, NBC, and CBS, the big three. And at age 35, he got distributions, and this is 1976, he got distribution rights for the Atlanta Braves baseball games. And that's why from 75 through 2005 and even to today, Atlanta Braves are all over the TV, all over the country, and they have a lot of fans because of that. So then, I mean, it's just a crazy story of him continually leveraging it all, risking it all to grow his business and grow his assets. And before I give away this entire story, he bought the Atlanta Braves at age 35. He bought the Atlanta Braves in 1976. In 1978, he founded the first 24-hour news station, CNN. He then went on to found TBS, Turner Broadcast. Then he founded TNT, and basically grew a media empire before merging with Time Warner and kind of cashing out when he was about 70 years old in the early 2000s. And this book is absolutely phenomenal. Ted is a character. He's controversial. He's had 3 wives. He has said tons of controversial things. He owns more land in acreage than anybody else in America. He owns one ranch out west that is, I think, 920 square miles. It's the biggest, put together piece of acreage that any private person owns in the United States. And kind of this book taught me a couple of lessons, or at least I gathered a couple things from it. And number one is it told me that I don't have what it takes to become a multimillionaire. A multi-billionaire. I don't have the drive. I don't have the desire. I don't have the risk tolerance to be a billionaire ever. When you read about these people, and it happens every time, when I read about Sam Walton, when I read about Rockefeller, when I read about Ted Turner, it makes me realize that I just don't have what it takes to become a multimillionaire. I don't have the drive. I don't have the desire. I don't want that for myself. Ted was absolutely obsessed with business. He never saw his family. He was always after the next deal. And as soon as things got comfortable and as soon as he started basically printing money, he was on to the next big thing. What was the next big thing? Oh, I'm going to sell everything and I'm going to buy the struggling radio station. Then I'm going to sell all these successful money-making radio stations and I'm going to buy a struggling TV station. And then when I get my TV station extremely profitable, I'm going to go after ABC, CBS, and NBC to try to become the third big player and found TBS. And when that's incredibly profitable, I'm going to find a way to do a 24-hour news channel. And it blew me away that every new chapter of this book was just another risk, huge risk. Obviously a well-calculated risk. Obviously he's brilliant. But there were many times that he risked it all. He risked it all just to cross over that next barrier when, in my opinion, there was no need to do that. Another cool thing that this book kind of signifies is the importance of ego. I mean, ego can be the enemy. Ego can hold you back. Ego can slow you down. Ego can make you a not likable person and really kind of halter your hold back your ability to do business deals. But it's also really important in business. If you don't trust yourself, if you don't think that you know what's going on, if you don't think you have all the answers, then it's going to be really hard to make these big, risky decisions. So it kind of made me realize that, hey, this guy, and the way he told these stories, it made it clear that he didn't know. He didn't know for sure. He knew he was no master. It said, oh, this is what I thought might happen, and this is what I'm going to do, period. And this is how it happened. It's just fascinating. And he did have a little bit of balance, but not in a healthy way. Not with his family, health, things like that, but he was extremely interested in sailing. He was a sailor, and he would, in these prime business years in his 30s and 40s when he was amassing his fortune and merging these companies and doing these huge deals, he would disappear for months on sailing trips. And when I say sailing, I'm not talking about hobby sailing. He was a professional sailor who would fund boats, build crews, and go race extremely competitive events against the Australians and others. I mean, the America's Cup is the United States against Australia. They have it every 4 years, and it's the top of the top. It's like the Olympics of sailing. It's more prestigious. And he actually won the America's Cup in 1978. He was on the boat that won the America's Cup. That takes extreme endurance, extreme dedication. He was practicing all the time. He was on the road all the time. There's a qualifying setup to get there. And at one point he tells the story of, I forget the name of the event, but basically they were doing this sailing competition. The weather got horrible. It's a very dangerous sport. Sailors die all the time. And 15 people died in this one event overnight. They weathered this huge storm. A bunch of boats were lost at sea, and a bunch of people died. And Ted was 45 when that happened. He was 45, already extremely wealthy, already owned the Atlanta Braves, but he would go out and put himself in this extreme danger to compete and to try to win. It just kind of shows his kind of ego and just desire to get uncomfortable. He was uncomfortable throughout his entire career. And I think that's a lesson that I can learn, is instead of settling down and operating my 7 or 10 storage facilities, operating my service business, living on my house, making $500,000, the goal of $500,000 a year forever, to continue to grow and to continue to find a rewarding life, you have to continue to challenge yourselves and you have to get uncomfortable. And nowhere is that more exemplified in my life than early in my career, when I was trying to build my business, and it was hard. It was uncomfortable. It was scary. It was stressful. But going through that stress, going through that uncomfort is really what led my life to open up. It taught me a ton. I learned a ton. And obviously now that we have a viable business, and it's just an amazing deal for me. So yeah, he was uncomfortable. As soon as he started making money, he would spend it all, risk it all for the next big thing. I thought it was extremely fascinating. That's the book. It's called They Call Me Ted by Ted Turner. Highly recommend that you read it. It's incredibly entertaining, and it tells a great story. You'll pick up a few lessons from this book.